Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Opinions That Matter. As we enter a brand new financial year, I'm sure most of you are ready with your strategic plans to bring in the next growth spurt for your brands and portfolios. In the past few years, our industry has seen many turnarounds in the corporate performances. This month, we had the privilege to speak with Mr. Vishwanath Swarup, who has been at the center of bringing in a turnaround for Bharat Serums and Vaccines Limited. Mr. Swarup, lovingly called Vishy by everyone at BSV, is a business leader with experience across emerging and developed markets. He has a rich experience across healthcare value chain in areas of strategy, operations, sales and marketing with the objective of serving patients. As most of you must have noticed, Bharat Serums as a corporate is clocking in a double-digit robust growth for almost 2 years now. I'm sure many of you are just as curious as I was to know how did this happen. What was the thought process that the leadership team had to bring in this performance? So, welcome to Opinions That Matter. Please help us understand what did change with Bharat Serums in the last 2 years.
First of all, thank you for having me on this forum. I really appreciate it. I think this is a great platform that you all have created. And I think I've seen some of the past talks as well. They've been very valuable and very insightful. I'm happy to be a part of this and glad to contribute to this as well. Coming down to the question that you're asking on the turnaround. See, I think a lot of what I say will be linked to the the philosophy or the values that we have as BSV. So it'll be linked towards what we're trying to drive, and of course, everything that I answer will be linked to that. When you talk about turnaround, I think that's an interesting topic because we at BSV have over the past, let's say, 2 years, 2.5 years, have gone through our turnaround ourselves, right? We are basically not growing earlier or flat. Now we are growing close to 40% plus. Now, fortunately, unfortunately, this has been my second turnaround experience, right? And earlier, when I was doing a commercial stint in Abbott, that was also a little bit of a turnaround story. And some of the learnings, I guess I can kind of say, what does a turnaround mean? I mean, very simplistically, if you take an inward looking view, which I don't agree with, but it's the elephant in the room, or the most common stated thing is, people not doing their targets, right? Either, you can talk about top line sales, or you can look at, the profitability, etc. But in my mind, that's a very simplistic way of looking at it. There are a lot of issues that go into, or a lot of dimensions that go into how was the target set, was it right, etc., etc. The way I look at it, for us at BSV, patients are at the center of everything that we do, right? So we always take a market back, saying what's happening in the market. So if I was to evaluate in our organization, or from the lens that I'm looking at currently, I would look at what is the market performance that is happening. In the market performance, again, very simplistically, you can look at what is your growth versus, category growth or anything like that. But I think you have to be a little more nuanced around that, saying when we were at BSV and we started looking at it, we went back and looked at, what do our customers think? And I think there can be 2 or 3 answers, but I'll restrict it to 2 scenarios. One, I think if your customers say that, first of all, you're not relevant to their practice or relevant to their patients, I think you need a turnaround. But in our case, what we saw at BSV is when we did a detailed survey, etc., there's something called the Net Promoter Score. And our Net Promoter Scores were very, very high. So we had very high recall as an organization in the minds of our KOLs, in the minds of our customers. However, now when we juxtapose that with our market shares, there was a huge gap. Seeing while we occupy a certain amount of mind share, we really don't have that level of market share. Right? And I think that's something that I would look at, or we looked at in this scenario, as an opportunity to really turn around and saying, can we actually make our brands serve more patients, serve more customers, to actually get the rightful place that they deserve in the market, because we had very high brand recall as a corporate. Our brands were powerful, but our market share was not lined up. So that's one example where it's a little bit differently looking at it, saying that we needed a turnaround, and we needed to turn around very, very quickly.
As an industry, we use productivity benchmarking as a gold standard when it comes to performance evaluation. So do you believe there are other aspects that can also or should also be considered to ensure the growth and turnaround happens faster?
Right. So I think the wrong way to look at it, because I'm calling that out, is typically because we tend to do that, is we start looking at productivity as one of the key metrics to start with, right? And so, the productivity is low, etc. And then there'll be enough people going around with throwing benchmarks saying this is the typical benchmark of productivity, etc., etc. But I think that's oversimplifying the issue, right? You look at it, every portfolio basket that you will have, product basket that you will have its own market potential, and will have its own productivity as a function of that, and meaning potential share and hence productivity. We tend to start at the bottom and not really keep the market at the center of it. As an example, if you're playing in a very high growth segment and your current productivity is low, if you just look at productivity, you will end up resizing the workforce or doing something which is actually hampering your growth. So you'll have to look at what is the opportunity out there, where am I currently, and then if I have the resources, let's over invest and grow this space, right? So that's one pitfall that I see. The second pitfall is we are not always looking at sales and marketing going hand in hand, right? Traditionally, our marketing capabilities, if you look at it, would be more around saying, there's a set pattern of engaging customers, building a brand, etc. Very rarely will we come up with something, and I'm using a cliche term, out of the box, and saying, let's try something new and what can be done. Anything that new that you do, you have to do it not just marketing in the marketplace through your sales arm. I don't see that happen very, very frequently.
So I wanted to have your views on learnings that we have had in the last 2 years, especially the lockdown phase where physically meeting our customers was just not possible for us.
You know, I remember sitting in discussions, being in discussions where saying, why do you need report detailing? How will it help? The person has to go, and if you don't go, the call will not happen. Your brand will suffer. You'll not be able to get your communicate. In my mind, you just take a step back and see what COVID has taught us. When lockdown one happened, you know what? First of all, we didn't know what to do. Clearly, and if I knock on ourselves, if you look at how our volumes just dropped, we didn't know what to do at all. What's happening now? If you juxtapose our sales volumes with the sales volume of any technology company, then, and case in point being Zoom, they probably had their best quarter, right? And so at times you need something like a crisis turning into an opportunity, right? It's again a cliche term, but I think that's what really woke us up and saying, you know what? There is something called digital out there, and we need to take it seriously. And not somebody, every pharma company, everywhere, we would have a person working on digital, and that person would never get time on the strategic forefront of what we are going to do. But COVID all of a sudden put the limelight on that little junior person in the organization and say, all of a sudden we need this done, and we need this done in 24 hours. And so, at times you kind of have to go through those knee jerks a little bit to kind of wake you up. And I think that was a big wake up call for us as an industry.
Now, you have worked in various industries and across various functions. So, you have a lot of experience when it comes to how well or how fast a change is adopted by the industry. Does your experience say that we as an industry, the pharma industry, is a little reluctant when it comes to adoption of changes?
On the flip side, right, I do side with where we are also. I don't want to be overly critical. See, any regulated industry, you see any you can take a pick. I think when there is a highly regulated industry, you will have a little bit of an adoption hitch, so to say. Anything new coming in, because you have to kind of, I've worked in FMCG also, right? Changing a pack size or changing, the packaging of an FMCG product is literally a week's job, right? And that's it. Now you compare that with what we do. We'll have to go through the right, and rightly so. I'm not criticizing the regulators in any way, because we are dealing with life. Products are life changing and life saving. And I think we can't be overly critical saying, FMCG has run that, but look at what we do in the marketplace and what our products do in the marketplace. And we need to be proud about that as well. So it's okay, it's fair to be critical, to see how we can improve as an industry, get new things, digital being one of the biggest ones for us, and but not be overly critical. I'll give an example of what we have done. We've launched something called bsvwithyou.com. Now, when we started this off, of course, this was in the midst of the pandemic. We said, how do we create a knowledge hub for our doctors or our customers so that they can continue to get cutting edge scientific and clinical inputs from world over, right? So, of course, it's became a knowledge portal. And I'm happy to say we've got around 12,000 HCPs registered for that, right? And they are on our portal. And this is a primarily a women's health and IVF focused portal. So we've got the best of the best contributing and consuming information. But you know what? That one thing we realized, saying knowledge portal, what's new in that? How do we start creating an ecosystem for women's health around that? And that's the big challenge we're dealing with. Of course, now as soon as you go there is regulatory issues, etc., and all that. And they're right. I mean, again, I'm not being critical, but that's the challenge for us. That now that we've embraced technology, how do we work with the regulators to make it more pragmatic, to bring new solutions for our patients to the market? And I think that's what we are working at BSV, saying not just a knowledge portal for our customers, but expand that horizon and saying everything women's health can be available in this. And then how do we go direct to consumer or direct to patient in this? Because of course, there are ethical lines around it. We'll have to say how we do it, etc. Be very, very clear on that. But I think that's something that we need to evolve and do it at BSV. And then, of course, I think the industry will also embrace that, and we'll see that movement happen very quickly.
Sir, in your experience, how are the challenges different for a mid-sized company like BSV compared to the startups? And is there a way where we benefit from the startup ecosystem in bringing about a growth trajectory for our industry?
So from our side, I think at BSV we are clearly, mid to large size pharma player. We've just recently shown our intent, and again, it's not closed as yet, but yeah, it's out in the media, so I can share. We are close to acquiring one of the women's health businesses, right? So very clearly, we are scaling up, and we are going to be one of the larger players, and be the number one women's health player in India of relevant women's health player, right? So that we are going to take care of. Now, as we are doing this, we are working with a lot of startups to bring some very interesting concepts to the market as well, right? Now, they can be in the space of devices and diagnostics. So we've tapped into the ecosystem over there. Now, one of the things that we've learned is the problems or the issues that they face, we just take them for granted. For a company our size, working capital, of course, we need to optimize, etc. But it's not something that, keeps us awake at night. For a startup, when you're dealing that, their challenges are very, very different. They are looking for survival. They are looking for funding. They are looking for working capital. How do we get the next, so to say, leg of growth? What's the new product, etc. So they have a lot of challenges, which in our kind of a setup are kind of at some level taken care of already. And I'm coming from an angle that when you try to partner with them, you've got to provide and you've got to ensure that it's a mutual win-win, and that's a difficult thing to do. It's easier said than done. But I think that's what we are trying to do and bring to the market. On the flip side, I think the startups, I think what is in their advantage is they don't have baggage of experience, if I may say. And that's a huge positive that I see, because when you start talking to them, they never bring up saying, this has always been done this way. And that's one of the most common things that you hear of a new idea when you float around it in our industry, saying aisa hota nahi hai, or it has never been done, how can you do it, etc., etc. And that's one of the most common resistance points that we see, points of resistance. But when you're working with a startup, it's a breath of fresh air. They say anything is possible. Let's figure out what are the problems and how do we start solving them one at a time. And I think that's something that we are really enjoying, we are thriving in. We are on the verge of bringing about 3 to 4 products from the Indian startup ecosystem to the market. Again, very relevant to our space of women's health, very relevant to critical care space. And those will be first in market and at times first in the world products. And we have very high aspirations for that. But again, thanks to the ecosystem of startups in India, which has enabled that.
So, thank you so much for this interaction. I must mention that you have obliged us by giving us this interview, even though your health is not up to the mark. This gesture gives us the confidence that we are, in a small way, adding value to the industry through these discussions. Let me also take this opportunity to remind our audience that the AWACS Awards have been announced to be held this year in November. Thank you all for joining us today morning. Have a great financial year ahead.